And we're live, Aggie. Yay! Okay. Wow, what a day today. That was really something. I decided when I was putting it all together, I had no idea that the video was so like choppy in the live broadcast. So it was a really surprise to me because on my end it looked beautiful. So I'm like, oh, it's gonna look beautiful for everybody. And my friend in England is like, you broke up. I lost you on the north, south, east, west thing. Did I kill my audio? Nope, it's still there. So, and then it just kept chopping in and out. And frankly, it was such a cool experience. Now, I've been there like well, not a gazillion times. That's hyperbole, but definitely I've been there plenty of times, especially during the summer when it's warm. Less when it's freezing, like it was 29 degrees out there. I want you all to know I really put myself out there for you because it was really cold. Did I mention that it was cold? Hey, Aggie, did I tell you how cold it was? It was super cold. So I know there are people in the Midwest who I have friends there who are probably laughing at me right now about my whiny cold weather. So, but it was really strange to just there I am in the middle and I'm trying to explain it what the X-shaped crossroad is about, right? The one that's an X. And every time, and the weird thing was when I went through the first part with the triangle crossroad, and when we can talk more about that if there's interest tonight. But when I was doing that one, that whole video, I checked the audio. I wanted to make sure everything was working because I was using my condenser mic and it was there. And I was really excited. I was like, yes, got it in a one shot. Like I just did the whole thing perfect. and so I was thinking to myself, wow, this is great. I'm gonna go march down that hill and I'll go get that other crossroad done and we'll be in and out real quick. No one gets hurt. and then I went down to the other one and I recorded all of that and it was great. In fact, that's what we got in the second half of the video was that it just went into a file location that I hadn't expected, which was weird. But that being aside, I was just glad it was there because when I went back and tried to do it again, my phone just kept having all these issues and my mic wasn't working. So I was like, okay, I'm just sort of done and we'll just cover this tonight because it's cold. And so I did that and then I got home and I put it all together. And then I found out that the live broadcast was like this whole choppy chop chop thing. And it felt real Blair Witchy to me, which I loved. I thought it was really cool. I know it was weird, but given the context of, I'm at the crossroads, right, Aggie? We did not take Aggie. I didn't take Aggie with me. You crazy? She'd freeze her feathers off. But anyway, yeah. So, and of course, the crossroad that really gave me the problem was the one where agreements would be made, which is the X marks crossroad. So hopefully you guys got to see that video. If not, it's totally cool. It's out there forever. Hey, Brandon, good evening. Thank you for saying hi. In fact, it really super duper makes me happy when people give me a shout out from wherever they happen to be and stuff. I'm more than happy to. Yeah, Brandon says good evening. I want to see. Oh, she's such a sleepy bird. She's super duper. This is like the best time to play with her because she's super duper sleepy and just like really, really cuddly. Like, see, people are like, why would you own a bird? Because they're so noisy and they're super duper demanding. And I'm like, yeah, but then they do this. And they'll do this for a long time. And it's so wonderful. So, anyway, I know, right? You're my sweetie. So she's a good girl. But oh, now she's all like, I'm gonna hide behind his head. Hey everyone, hi Robin, how's it going? Thank you. So, hi Aggie. Yeah, she's such a sweetie. So she's getting all shy. That's funny. She's like, I'm gonna hide behind his head. Nobody can see me back here. I'll just clean my feathers. Anyway, so the video process today was really quite different, but given the context, of Crossroads and things like that, it seemed appropriate. I was kind of like the universe was working with me in that it was kind of working, in a weird way because, well, you can see what I got. It was just so weird. I'm just, I'm like, Len, let me just tell you all about it. And chink, I'm like talking. I'm still talking, and then no, nothing. So my cat is on my shoulder too. Yeah, see, there's something about your animal just kind of hanging out with you on your shoulder. Isn't it? It's true. It's true, huh, Aggie? Yeah, they're just like totally part of your zone. So it's fun. On the downside, though, if your animal's in a cranky place and they're on your shoulder, that's not quite so awesome because then they're like, you know. So she's in a good spot right now, though, oh, sweetie. Oh yes, oh right there. She's all. Oh, yep. Thank you. So yes, absolutely. So yes, your cat likes hiking and camping too. That is awesome. I was going to take one of my dogs with me. My Chihuahua Pickles insisted on at least going in the van with me, so she went that far. But it was really cold. I was afraid that like she little pickle paws would she'd be a pickle sickle when I was done. So she stayed in the warm toasty van in the sun, and I went up hiking for the video. But Aggie actually does like going out and about during the summer months when it's warm, and then she'll just kind of hang on with me. But other than that, she's my permanent Halloween costume. Just go like this. I'm a pirate. So, oh God, it's so great to have you guys here and hang out. That's really cool. If any of you guys have any, let's see, my Catahoula leopard dog. Oh, Kalalula leopard dog. Tell me about it. I owned one, and wow, that was an experience. It really was. They are definitely they need a lot of space to move, to just be them because they're amazing. They're super loving and stuff. But wow, at least ours was very active, and so it was an experience. Yes, thank you. A handful, absolutely. So it will test your dog ownership prowess for sure. But oh my goodness. Oh, let's see what else we got going on here. Mm. Mm, mm, mm. Ah, yes. So, um, let's see. And you know what? I was actually really happy about one point in the second part of the video. I am going back to the Crossroads thing when I talked about the X one, right? The one that everyone is traditionally is thinking about. And if you guys have any questions about that, let me know. Otherwise, if you have other questions, I totally am down with that. And if you just want to talk about all the dogs we've had, I've had a lot of dogs over my life, and they've been a very important part. They still are. They absolutely are. Like I am a total dog person, although we've recently adopted a cat who lives in the kitchen and hangs out in the yard and is totally cool that my daughter brought her home. So, yeah. So now we have Pumpkin. So I have Pickles and Pumpkin. They are. Animals are amazing. Absolutely. And in a way, you can have a degree of shamanism through or with your cohabitation with your animals because if you live with them, when you sleep with them, you feed them, you eat together, you watch TV together, like you're living with your animal like this. She laughs, for instance, at the most perfect points. We'll be watching a TV show and then she'll be like, ha, 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 ha. And I'm just like, whoa, she got the joke. Like she's actually, or she'll be like, oh no, it's too much. And y'all have seen videos with the animals watching the dogs and stuff, but on TV, like watching the TV. But when you're living with your animal, you realize they have consciousness. I'm always aghast when people are like, does an animal have a soul? And I'm absolutely, of course. Yes, and including my snake. They just each interpret and interact with reality at a different level, but there is so much that you can gain by understanding your animal, understanding why certain animals are chosen to represent certain archetypes later on, and the significance of those archetypes. When you own a bird, for instance, you get a real insight on, oh my gosh, I just had a Sunny in Philadelphia moment. You get an insight on bird law. No. uh, you get a you get an insight on how the animal is, and then birds tend to act pretty much the same. We've had ducks and chickens, and I have a parrot. I've had her for decades now, and each of them respond differently. They have a different way they carry themselves. And the same can be said of your dogs or your cats or your snakes or your goldfish, even your goldfish. So I've had all of them, like, because I've had all my kids, and so we've had the hamsters and all the small rodents. We've had a giant lizard that we found a long time ago. If my family's out there watching, they know what I'm talking about. That was seriously like we had just like foster homed it till we found a home for it. It was like this huge giant monitor lizard that we found on the road just running. Someone had just released it. Anyway, feeding that thing in the bathroom was an experience. But it gives you a whole new insight on certain things, and then you just scale that up, right, to larger animals. Oh, where's my bird from? She's actually from Oregon. She's domestically grown, but she's a blue-fronted Amazon from Peru by ancestry. But she's got a little bracelet on. She was bred here in the Pacific Northwest. And she was a rescue. I rescued her. The story is kind of fun. I was volunteering with some disabled kids at a local animal shelter. And like, I know, it's like, oh, and it was Christmas time, right? So we're all doing this volunteer thing, and we're doing this volunteer thing, and in the background I hear what sounds like this little old lady, and then later it sounds like a child. And Amazons will vocalize like that, like they'll sound like this little old lady and then sometimes like a little kid, and then they'll go back and forth. So I've had birds before her, so I was familiar, because like I said, birds kind of are birds, and they have the same kind of behaviors. And so I asked the director, I'm like, hey, you wouldn't happen to have like an Amazon parrot back there? And she was like, how did you know? And I was like, well, because I've had birds before, and can I see her? Is it okay? And she's like, oh, would you please? Because that poor animal, we just had her turned over, and she's under all this stress, and she won't eat, and she won't go at anybody, and we've had the door open to try to coax her out, but she won't. And she just kept telling me. So we're walking down the hall, and her office door is open, and as I turn the corner and look in, I'm like looking like this, the bird looks at me and then flies to my shoulder and lands right on my shoulder and starts making little kissy noises. And I know, bless you. It was really cute though. And anyway, so she's making all these kissing noises, and the director's like, "Hey, would you like a bird? It'll just be for administrative costs. We have to do the paperwork, but she's all yours." And because she wanted to be with me, and so I took her home. The next day, they had to still come and check out my house to make sure I was, good, and I had a nice home, and so everything was fine. Plenty of room for Aggie to live, and of course I was able to demonstrate that I was good with birds, and I've had her ever since then. And that was let's see, 2002. It's been 20 years. Yeah. So it's been that long. So so she and I have been friends since that long. And let me tell you, boy, some days she drives you crazy. Birds are somewhat psychic, I swear, or they can hit that frequency where they can interrupt your capacity to think by making certain intonations or repeated sounds. I'm not kidding. Like, it's maddening. Like, you're like, please stop. And they'll just keep doing it because they want attention. And so, yeah. Anyway. Hey, Alexander, how's it going? Oh, Brandon says, fun little aside. I worked at a wildfowl waterfowl sanctuary. I love most birds. Mated cranes can go fly a kite, though. That's funny. I used to have a little gray-chested Quaker, and his name was Belden, and he was so funny because he would punk people, and he'd be like, "Hey, come take a look," and he was really good at vocalizing for a little Quaker, and he'd make all these little chirps and noises and coax someone in, so they'd be like, "Oh, he's so sweet," and then the bird would start bam, 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 bam on the cage, just bang it really hard and go. It was too much. Like, he really got off on punking people and like luring them in, then frightening them really fast. And then once you pulled him out, he was a complete pushover. Like, he would just lay on his back and be like, "Oh, you can love me." So, but birds can be quite characters, huh? You want to stand up for just a sec? No, you just want to sit there. That's cool. I love you too. So yeah, quite a character. But very time consuming. So the neon cicada says, the more time I spend with animals like turkeys, the more I question if we should really be eating them like we do. In some distant future, I often wonder if they'll be writing of the Great Chicken Holocaust. Where it's like, because we eat so many chickens, it's actually alarming. But anyway, we're not going to talk about chicken meat. Aggie's here. There we go. So, anyway, so that's how Aggie and I met years ago, and she's really good with most people. You can't really promise that with birds, like they're like, is it friendly? Can I touch it? And those are the two questions that people who get bit usually ask, because they're not asking prior to reaching out for the bird. They're actually reaching out for the bird and then saying those words. So most birds interpret that as, this person is an idiot and I totally can bite their finger. I don't know what birds are thinking, but they totally, every time, it never fails. Is it friendly? Can I touch it? My bird turns into the devil animal deep inside of her. And yeah, huh. Otherwise, she's a sweetie. She's a total sweetie. Yeah, no, you can't touch it. It'll bite your finger off. Yeah, it knows you're afraid. Oh, okay. So let's talk about the cool thing about birds. Now, I've joked before about how pirates would use the birds because they look backwards. She likes to look forward here because she totally is into looking at the camera. See, she knows where the camera is and she's really into it. In fact, she loves doing the live shows. It's amazing how awesome she is during the live shows. But with birds in general, they can sense your energy. And birds, I personally believe, after years, decades of working with them, if you are a high energy person who is nervous, like you're just nervous, you're anxious, you kind of, they will sense that, and then they're going to defend themselves every time. So you have to recognize that there's nothing to fear, because the bird is literally going to reflect that emotion back at you. Like, it will become anxious, it will become defensive. Now, I've noticed most animals actually will do that, but birds are at the top of my list for being like an anxiety meter. So if you don't want to take your bird into a high intensity environment, if it's used to living someplace that's quiet, right? It just, and you don't want your bird to be exposed to all that high energy. It's just kind of practical bird tips from a guy who's had bird for decades, but real common sense stuff. And it's because birds have this capacity to be really, 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 really sensitive to electromagnetic fluctuations in everything, and especially people. It's really weird. They can feel it, and if this is where you can do that kind of neo shamanism, where you can use the bird and its intelligence as a tool to guide you as a human being into understanding how to see the way they see, how to understand what they're understanding, and that allows you then to really gaze through their eyes. You get but you don't really use your eyes. I mean, we're not talking your physical eyes, but you're using this again, right? You're opening that up, and you're allowing yourself to experience that subtle energy. That's how I understood, how I learned, truly learned, like, this is what the subtle energies are about, is by being in and around my birds, and realizing, that they're sensitive to this energy, and by working with them, you can learn how to become the same. Just like working with your dog can teach you other things. Brandon says, gotta go. Animals are acting up. All right, Brandon. Thank you for showing up, Brandon. I really appreciate it. So Horace says, I wonder if it's the same mechanism that allows them to navigate via magnetic fields. It's interesting you mentioned that. Part of their navigation actually has to do with the nature of their eye and the fact that they can actually see a slight color shift on the pole. So as they fly north, not surprisingly, it has a reddish shift to them. And as they fly south, they can see the bluer shift. So that's, but of course, all of that is electromagnetism. It's the little magnetoception stuff sorry, I'm not a super scientist on bird eyes, just bird law. Oh dear. So, yeah. Does the bird, I've never actually thought of that. I figure this is the shoulder that she can annoy me the most on. See, right now, I would prefer if she sat on my right shoulder, but I guarantee you, if I moved her to my right shoulder, she'd go sit on my left shoulder. Now, if she was on my left shoulder, then she'd be sitting on my right shoulder. Like if I wanted her on this one. And I've even tried to Bugs Bunny my bird, where, that whole skit with Daffy and Elmer, where it's duck season, it's rabbit season, it's duck season. So I've been like, you really want to, no, birds are way smarter than that, huh? Oh, you're so sleepy. So, but that would definitely place her in Chokmah. So, yeah, right, because of where she's sitting at my shoulder. Well, technically it'd be Gadula, but because the hook was higher over here. Anyway. Oh my heavens. So let's see. It's been a long day. If you hadn't noticed, I've been doing this all day because I love it. Actually, I had a super awesome day. It's been fun. I really was looking forward to doing this evening. So, um, let's see. Oh, that's in, Horace says, oh, that is interesting because I was pondering what exactly seeing aura coloration represents. And it occurred to me that the visible spectrum may just repeat in octaves. Yeah, right. I would I I could see where you're going with that. And that concept, if you want to bridge that upward, would be found in the Kabbalion. There's a whole section in there where it's laying out various levels and dimensions. And I don't have to, I'm not going to look up the chapter, but it layers that out. And the rule is that as above, so below, and as below, so above. So principles that govern our reality also govern those the farther inward we go and upward we go in vibration. So, and we see this when we look at the tree of life and the four worlds as expressed in each sphere. So, each sphere itself resides within a particular world that is representative of a domain, right? Fire, water, air, and earth. And then within each sphere, each Sephiroth, are four domains, which we see as each of the enumerated cards, and they go from pentacles to wands, right? So that idea of it layering in octaves, in principle, can be seen as correct, right? We know that in practice, as we expand from the visual spectrum outward, it simply is an increase or a decrease in vibratory status, so that the wavelength becomes longer and the frequency becomes more intermittent. Whereas if you go the other direction, the wavelength is shorter, the frequency is higher. So, but outside of our domain, one would then expect that would happen in principle again. So you can't have universes layered on each other with opposing rules. There would have to be an overall rule then that permitted them to have contact, and therefore perhaps some kind of etheric barrier that would be an airlock, if you will, between universes. And that is often described, not surprisingly, in the use of crossroads as a way to have access to those points of interest. So we barely, by the way, scratch the surface of the crossroads. Super fun topic. And just because it involves a category of magical practitioners who find themselves isolated, specifically exorcists and magicians would be the ones who would be the most interested in knowing about these things, because their craft involves the construction of these implements in order to create what they wish to create. If you're at a crossroad and you decide to draw a circle around that, say, you've now created something that could be considered containment within a particular frame of reference. Horace says the principle of correspondence is so useful for reorientating yourself when concepts and systems seem impenetrable. Yeah, absolutely, 100%. It is truly indispensable. And then recognizing that there are certain principles which are identifiable And because they're identifiable, you can gain a sense of their wavelength. I'm really excited, by the way, Boris, since I've got you here. Tarot Tuesday is going to be fun because it's on the 7th. And so I figured we could talk about NetSuck. And one of my viewers, just kind of a spoiler, but one of my viewers is a photographer. And when he was looking at one of my older videos and a discussion of complementary colors, and he points out some useful information about the color green, which I found enlightening and amazing. Like, for instance, if you want your camera to know what midline is, right? You know, I'm paraphrasing, I'm not the photographer, but you'd use a blade of grass, is what he said. You know, get a nice green one, and it'll help your color saturation and stuff all work out. Anyway, there's something to be said for then NetSuck and the color green and its association with the tree at that point, what it represents. So we're going to talk about that on Tuesday, on Tarot Tuesday, so which I'm super excited for. And don't forget, I believe that's chapter 22 of the Mystical Kabbalah. Let's see. And the answer is yes, chapter 22. So that'll be for what's coming up on Tuesday. And you guys, I post that and let everyone know what that is. You can check that out through Patreon. Some stuff you just have to do that because YouTube just doesn't. It won't work for personal one-on-one instruction type stuff. So I use that, and then we do the Zoom thing. And let me grab some water. I sound like Vin Diesel. So, and then everyone can participate. I have enough room in there. Yeah, that'll be great. NetSuck has oddly been maybe the most elusive Sephira to really crack. Yeah, it is, but it isn't. And hopefully, when I share with you some of these insights, it'll help crack that nut for you. All right. Well, this has been awesome. Any questions? Anything, you guys? I'll throw it out to you. It's been super fun talking about Aggie and today's adventures and animals. And yes, I love you too. And oh, that's right. I already had some. So before I go, I'm going to answer a couple of these. These are just my quick notes because I was like, oh, this is a good question. So I just, can you explain the relationship of storytelling and astrology? And so as an astro historian, which is awesome. That's a really good question. Here's the thing. When you're out during the daytime, you can't see anything. The sun obscures all things but itself, and occasionally the moon. At night, imagine a society, and so during the day, that's when everything is conducted. All business is conducted historically. We didn't have all this light and illumination and the ease and warmth that we have today. We didn't have books and whatnot, so you would gather together as a community and share communal stories, which then you could reference in the heavens by pointing at certain constellations. And the significance of a constellation is it's like watching a static molecule electromagnetically in space, because it's moving with you, right? Or you're moving with it, but you're synchronized. So no matter where you go, Orion's always going to look like Orion from this planet's standpoint, from our perspective. If you go away from that, it'll change. It's one of the ways that we can zero in. Like if aliens snatched you up and took you away, and they said, "Okay, we forgot where we got you. Could you at least describe where you live?" If you understood the 12 constellations that were surrounding our star from the standpoint of the third planet from that star, they'd have a pretty good idea of where you are, assuming that they have maps and things. But they're aliens and stuff. So let's see. The 51 Project says the spiral in Hawaii recently, I believe a counter spiral denoting cosmic events. There was like that similar, you had that? They had that? I haven't heard about that one. Just like the one in Norway, right? That is literally, we're watching, it's a form of aurora. It's electromagnetic. And you're seeing something that our ancestors beheld, and then they put it all over the walls. We can see them in petroglyphs that are like 20,000 years old. We think they're at least 11,000 years old. And so we've got these petroglyphs throughout the American Southwest and elsewhere around the world that show these similar spirals. The idea of them denoting something strange coming would be indicative of, perhaps, if you want to go the sciencey route, the diminishment of the electromagnetic field around the planet. There's a whole lot of talk about that, that things may be changing in the near future to 100 years. My focus is, if that's the case, the thing to prepare is heart and mind, because everything else could wash away. So no matter where you go, there you are. You're the one, right? If you're not ready, you won't be ready. No amount of preparation will be fixing you if you're not ready. So my focus is that. Let's see. Yes, comment. I know. Yes. Sorry, she was making a particular noise, and I'm like, I'm going to take a moment and allow Aggie to handle herself. Give me just a second. She's got to go potty. So come on, sweetheart. I'll be right back. Oh, that didn't take long. So she's a sweetie. She doesn't have to notify me, but she makes a certain clicky noise that's sort of like, hey, I really got to go. And if you don't pay attention to that, then it's on you. It's literally on you. So, and plus she's tired. So anyway, the association with like some kind of disaster tied with those kind of images in the sky could be drawn to then our prehistory, right? If you are a catastrophist like myself, then you're looking at the Younger Dryas as a point at which things dramatically changed for the entire environment on planet Earth. Not merely that the water levels rose, right? But that the megaflora died, which meant the megafauna died, which meant environmental collapse to the extreme. And the question no one ever asks is, why did all the plants get smaller, and why did so many of them die? And the answer that I see is, as a person who's grown plants, is that if you reduce the light, then your plants are smaller. And if the plants are out in greater light, then they get bigger. And if that is sustained generationally, then you get the maximum yield of a plant. You can have a plant that's going to be like 1.5 feet tall under reduced light. Then you put it out in the yard somewhere, and the thing's 4 feet tall. The difference is the light. So if the light on Earth changed, say another nearby star suddenly blinked out, then everything around the planet will change with that. Any life form that's dependent on that kind of energy is going to die, is just going to die. Whatever it is, it will die if it can't find a supplement to that light. So that's what I believe happened at the conclusion of the Younger Dryas. And we have a lot of petroglyphs that show that spiral action going on. We also know that, things happen then. Like there's a lot of other science stuff. Don't want to be dismissive, but it's depressing. It is, because when you realize that the Earth very sensibly runs as a clock, everything about the Earth is representative of the principle of rhythm. Every measure of time that we have is simply a enunciation of rhythmic force and flow and action. So if the planet itself is following and residing within that, which we know it does because it's in the middle pillar, then to say that we have certain rhythmic flows with our star that mirror things that we have here on the Earth, like seasons, except for because it's a star, the scope of time is much greater, then we have to honor that rhythm and be prepared for it. And interesting question. Wow, went down that rabbit hole. Do you think the usefulness of correspondences, the neon cicada says, at Horace, do you think that the usefulness of correspondences is because most of those ideas are themselves symbolic representations of much greater collective human experiences? And Horace says, I would say that everything you encounter is a symbolic representation or reflection of some aspect of you, and correspondences help you to organize them for extracting wisdom. I like that. Allow me, let's see. Oh, and the neon cicada says, sometimes I wonder if anything in our world has intrinsic meaning beyond those that we give to them. So let's take a moment. That's actually not really nihilistic. That's a sensible observation. Let's take a look at what a symbol is. For me, a symbol is a means of expressing in condensed form an experience, a thought, or a thing. So you can take something and scale it down really small and make an X. And from that, depending upon the degree to which you understand all of the correspondences associated with that symbol, it will determine how much illumination you get by seeing it, right? How much awareness comes to you. As one of the funny jokes in Thor's, I think it was in Ragnarok, or maybe it was Infinity War, I don't know, he points out that all words are made up, and that's true. All words are made up. The question is the composition of the word and who's doing the making up of the word. And is it possible that those sounds or intonations are descriptive? We know that with the English language, for instance, the sounds and intonations which I make perform the act of a cipher, because I'm encoding things into small bytes, and then these bytes are unified, right? So Horace says, I wonder that too. And what I've landed on is that everything has to have the same intrinsic meaning, which happens to be I am. And I think that's kind of where I was going, was that the symbol is a reflection of, well, by saying that this is what I'm experiencing, it is a description of what you are, at least at the moment, or what you are a part of, or what you correspond to. It is a description of you in relationship to everything else. But ultimately, yeah, I would say that symbols, to be interpreted in full and completely, most successfully, you become the symbol. You step into the symbol. You liken it to yourself. And so, the more complex the symbol, the more time you can spend in contemplation of yourself in relationship to that symbol. Horace says you need polarity to start, to have distinctiveness, which has already added subjectivity on top of the absolute. And you know, that's true. It's true. You are, in seeking to identify your individual experience as being distinct from the experience of someone else, you can have a shared experience, but no matter how shared that experience is, it's not the same experience because it's coming through the filter of your soul. So by de facto, you are polarizing yourself against the entirety of the universe in the assertion of your I amness. So, and the realization or actualization of your meanness, right? So, uh, the time when in meditation that you begin to feel a sense of the third party observer, the sense of the higher self, is when you move from the I into the me, right? And then to the myself. The recognition that you're looking at your distinctiveness from the aspect of the universe looking at itself. So a meditation on that level can be really, really quite beneficial. I can't tell you how, I cannot underscore sufficiently the degree to which a me, myself, and I meditation can be in terms of recognizing the communion that exists within the unified state of consciousness that you are actually experiencing. The state of consciousness that is your physical body and its needs. And believe me, it has needs. And if you're trying to reduce your carbs and you're feeling that chocolate bar, I'm just talking, but it's true. Your physical body has demands which can alter your consciousness completely. The mind is the mediator between that and the higher self. So as you're working through a meditation like that, you can then see yourself in that triad that is part of the archetypal world. It is that overarching concept that you can then look at. You can recognize where Freud then would develop his idea of the id, the ego, and the superego, or the idea of the shadow, right, from Jung. It's all drawn through an analysis of looking at the tree and recognizing how things are in operation there. Neon Cicada says, I wonder what it says about the power of storytelling and the way those stories shape us. It says, it's all about you, or it says. Yeah, going back to the storytelling, our stories, this is a really cool topic when I consider where inspiration comes from, like true inspiration. I don't think it's narcissistic, really. I mean, it can be. Look, okay, going into that narcissistic idea, it can be, but here's the scoop. Just because I can't prove you're all actually out there and I'm not just in a box somewhere doesn't mean it's not true. I'm just kidding. Well, but the idea is that the only reality that I can prove is my own. I can't prove your reality. That's not narcissism. I mean, true narcissism would be self-interest above all other things, right? Nothing else is real. I'm the only thing that matters. And now you're a psychopath. So that I don't think that's really what we're talking about. And I don't think it's really nihilistic in the true sense of nihilism. But when we look at our stories and where they come from, some of our stories are retellings, to be sure. And there's a really cute thing on Netflix with Rob Lowe, and he kind of runs through all the cliches that Hollywood does and kind of gives you the sort of reasons why. But then there are the other stories. And I wonder sometimes, and by other stories, I mean the deeper ones, the ones that seem to really resonate on a larger scope, the big ones. Are these stories retellings of rechanneled, relived trauma? Maybe, I don't know. Like there's certain levels of inspiration. I'm thinking in terms of your galactic spanning science fiction, your deepest reaching fantasy. I don't know if anyone's ever read any Edgar Rice Burroughs. I highly recommend the entire Barsoom series. Just when you realize when this person was writing and then what he's writing about, I'm sort of like, wow, like most of that you could just transplant directly into a modern sci-fi show and it would be consistent with everything. And yet where did that come from from a 19th century author? I just, so I wonder about stuff like that. I wonder, if anyone has ever worked with any kind of art, any kind of expression, whether it's written or painted or sculpted, when you allow yourself to express through a medium of some kind, where does some of that come from? Like when you're in the zone, when you're connected as an artist, think about it. What are you touching when you do that? If you're composing music, what are you hearing? What are you touching when you do that? To me, it is the absolute resolution of perfection in terms of a distillation of a specific rhythmic vibration. You've tuned in to something. When it happens to me as I write or do something, all sense of time disappears. All sense of being anywhere absolutely disappears. I'm 100% inside of it. There's a scene in the movie Amadeus that comes to mind. Mozart is working on the Requiem Mass, and someone's banging on the door, and he's sitting there just moving a pool ball while he's writing and doing the work. He's composing, and you can hear the music just pounding in his head, and there's pounding in the background, but he can't hear that. And to me, that's creative ecstasy. It is, it's amazing. And it's what I believe is then a transmutation of consciousness, because you've ascended, you've gone from one place that's here, and now you're here, or wherever here is, but you're there. And that expansion of consciousness is the connection. In other terms, like they talk about it as a form of astral projection. And when you realize the astrum, those are the stars True astral projection then exists outside of time, outside of distance. And when you realize that everything is immediately present within the framework of the internal vibratory now, then distance can become irrelevant in that kind of communion. So I don't think it's narcissistic because when you work with that kind of stuff, you know the universe is real. Like you know that it's silly to just assume you're the only thing there, because going back to the animals, you have connection that wasn't there before. And part of our gift as being human is, in my absolute firm belief, is to raise the consciousness of everything around us. So an ordinary animal acts one way, and then if you're a certain kind of person, that animal is changed. It becomes more than just a dog or a cat. It has empathy. It has all kinds of things, understanding of language. Well, we do that. We, as human beings, raise that with everything around us. It's what we do. That's why I say we're transmutation machines as human beings. We can take anything and make it better. We can make it awesome. It's just down to us deciding to do that. Horace says, let's see, only if you deny the oneness and divinity of all. Yeah, when you begin to recognize that the way to understand the oneness of everything is by experiencing yourself separately first, by recognizing I'm in here, and this is how it feels to be in here. It's the most revelatory meditation, and also it's a really great way to work through aches and pains, because then you can kind of unwind certain muscles and go, okay, and work through, have almost Bene Gesserit level degrees of self-awareness in terms of just slowly working through yourself to unwind, so that then the body can work as a fine instrument and vibrate. But it can't do it if it's all bunched up. So you kind of, I'm in here. And that distinction, that polarization of separateness then becomes your, I'm not just me. As I breathe, I'm taking things in. As the sun is touching my skin, I take in its light. I transmute the light into me. It becomes part of me. It warms me. It's a physical sensation. It stands in contrast to the coolness at my back. Like you work your mind through each of these layers and levels of awareness and recognize that you are part of all of that. That it's not just that you're experiencing it, but you're also respirating. You're warming the air around you. If it's cold, you can feel it emanate, like you saw the steam come out of my breath. So I'm changing and altering, and my part of me is becoming part of everything, and it is also part of me. Yanti Thackeray says, I hope I said your name right. I was with it when they changed what it is. So now, or I'm here. Okay. Besides, in that sort of experience, Horace says, you lose yourself. Yes, and the key is, when you lose yourself, that's when you find yourself. That's when you're part of the system. When you identify yourself, you then give that up, then you find what you actually are, and it works back and forth like that. All things conspire to the will of God, knowingly or not knowingly. It seems, no, I en je suis. Okay. I would say that it's interesting you mentioned the will of God. because that speaks to previous week's discussion of free will, and the idea that your alignment as a result of your behavior, which is a sequence of decisions that you make, and as those decisions unfold, they restrict other decisions from being made, and they open new decisions, right? And so the perspective, as we talked about, is straight as the way, narrow as the gate, or narrow and narrowing. The idea is it kind of is like a funnel going in. As you align yourself to a particular force, and to me, after a lot of serious contemplation, like honestly, it's funny. You can think about these things a lot. I know that some people were sort of like, how can you say light prevails, and a couple like that, and well, I'm going off of what I understand is presented in the tree and how reality is functioning, and just the actual concrete reality of, I've been in a cave before, and everyone turned off the light, and it's really dark, and then someone lit a lighter, and it was not dark anymore, and it was amazing the effect that had. I've always had it here, rent free, forever, never forget, because of how important that was to me at the time. And it's an image that exists. So ultimately, regardless of what we might think, in many ways, I think if you've had time to read the Purgatorio, then Dante suggests that all forms within purgatory, which are representative of sin, are actually misdirections of love, right? They're a misapplication. It's just, so lust is the love of God, but now it's the love of the flesh, right? And you can work through the 7 deadly sins that way, and Virgil does a better job of explaining it than I do. But the idea is as we're here, I kind of lost my train of thought when I was thinking about Dante. Oh no, it's so funny. This is where someone in the room is always really good. Help. Anyway, Aggie would have helped me for sure. Oh, right. Okay, back to free will. So the idea then, I had to just reread Yanti's comment. So the idea of free will is that if you choose to align yourself to the force which is prevailing, which would be light, then you will by de facto start constraining yourself from other actions. It's sort of, it's really weird, but it's the same as if you like change your body's behavior, its dietary behavior, its physical behavior. It'll start asking you for what it needs, which then is a restriction of other activities, right? Because you're no longer eating one way, now you're eating another, which opens up new possibilities for you, but it also narrows things down because there's no going back. I mean, there could be, I suppose, but anyway. So in the same sense, you could say that all things will gather back to the source. If the immediate source was an emanation of light and consciousness and fullness from Keter, and that Chokmah conspired to allow that to happen, and Binah conspired to receive it, which created the first vibration, the first sound, which was enough to create everything after that, and manifest that in Braya and all realms descending below that in the tree, in increasing degrees of complexity. So if that's the case, and it ordered out that way, then the tree is giving you the correct path to return to the source, which would be up through the middle pillar, right? But again, that's one of those things where you're making a decision to utilize a particular tool in an effort to help you distill your consciousness, which with what seems to be the order of things universally, right? So, wow, this has been great, you guys. We've talked about a bunch of stuff. Oh, we got an extra viewer. Hello, whoever's out there. Shout out to all of you guys who've been participating. Thank you. This has been a great dialogue. So, any other comments or questions, you guys? Oh, it's been an hour. So, my voice is going away. So, if there's not anything else, I had a wonderful time, you guys. Thank you, everyone, for hanging out with me for over an hour. This has been a lot of fun. I'm going to go cuddle Aggie, put her to bed, and I will talk to you guys soon. And that's it. Bye, you guys.